Welcome to Your Therapist's Favorite Therapist podcast. While I may be a licensed therapist, I'm not your licensed therapist. For a deeper connection, please reach out to a medical provider today. Let's begin. I am so excited to have you here, and I'm doing things a little bit different in this episode. I want to place you really in my head, scary place to be, but I want to place you here for a little bit. I originally was setting myself up to do these pretty intense, longer podcasts where I was talking about topics that I was very interested in, similarly to what I'm going to be discussing today, but I found that I almost wasn't connecting with it as much just because of how intense it was and is and the message that I want to get across. And so I'm going to try to change it up and see how it feels, how you guys feel about it, and just going from there. And so I'm excited to talk about today's topic because I was really inspired by what I was seeing on social media, which is such an interesting statement to begin with. But basically, if you haven't seen it, which this was very niche, so I don't think many people have, but there was this person that posted online that basically was saying, "Hi, I know that a lot of people normally have experiences with friends that are jealous of them, but here I am as someone who was jealous in a friendship and I'm no longer friends with them because of this jealousy." And, you know, people obviously do what they do best and have multiple opinions about the same thing over and over again, and no one really always has the best opinions. It's more of a blown up affair. But I find the conversation that she had and the topic around her to be very interesting, as it's two sides to the same situation from different perspectives, and I really want to talk about it. So this podcast episode is really about jealousy in friendships, and really the goal of this is to recognize when it's in our friendships, recognizing it when it's in yourself in these relationships, and what to do with it when you're faced with having jealousy. So I don't know about you, but I have definitely more so been on, I would say that I've been on both sides, but I've more so been on the side where I've been in friendships and the person that I'm friends with has something going on, and something just feels off. And lo and behold, after some time and distance, you realize that it was jealousy. And I don't know how, if you haven't experienced it, I want to really walk you through what it can look like. And so I don't know if you've ever had friendships where you've told them really good news and, you know, celebrated, but just kind of felt off, or they've made like maybe some weird digs that you can't tell if they're a compliment or an insult, and you're just kind of like, how am I supposed to take that? And maybe you are being insulted over and over again, and you're expected to almost like brush it off. Or maybe your birthday or big events that you're meant to be celebrated with or for aren't really being celebrated, and it almost is perceived as like this inconvenience of such. And then you kind of like try to rationalize it in your head and kind of dismiss it as maybe being almost like dramatic and overthinking it, maybe reading the room wrong. So you kind of just like brush it off, and you really just, it doesn't feel great. Or I would say like sometimes it can almost feel like a competition of sorts, and that you feel like you're in this competition where if you're looking on paper, you know that you are winning, but you feel like you're losing. And that's what it feels like to be in a relationship with someone who is jealous. And oftentimes when I find myself in these events and when they occur, I find myself really, really confused. And I look around and try to understand where the person is coming from, and if I did anything to cause this or impact the way it's being delivered. Maybe I read it wrong. Maybe people were drinking. Maybe they were, you know, just having a good time, getting caught up in the performance of whatever story they're telling, whatever it is, right? To the point, I've done this to the point where I'm like arguing in my own head about what is happening. And the person who is kind of navigating all this is definitely not thinking so clearly about this, because it comes down to the fact that I'm doing everything in my power to see this person who is potentially like acting really jealous towards me the best way that I possibly can. Like they're like another reason as to why this is occurring. But deep down, I just feel like yuck. Like I feel gross. And there isn't even a discussion around it. And the reaction that I'm feeling and the emotions become bigger in my head, but I then question if they were even real, because not only am I not reacting, the person's not really reacting, obviously, because yeah, they're the ones who are jealous, and this is their reaction, but the people around me are just like, oh, okay, haha, that was funny, and maybe even assuming the best intentions as I'm trying to do, but they're not the butt of the joke or whatever it is that is kind of happening here. And I would say that some of these examples of what jealousy in friendships, at least the verbal kind, can look like in this example I'm going to give, is kind of like small digs of like trying to one-up the other person, or, you know, maybe, oh, why do you have to dress like that? Or, oh, that must be nice. It's oftentimes in their tone, and, you know, you see them competing with you instead of celebrating, and really, really, really present when you're struggling, but maybe not when you're doing well. And oftentimes it can feel really tense and uncomfortable, like you're almost like waiting for the other shoe to drop. At least those are some like verbal examples, I would say. Other jealousy would be almost like copying and then trying to like steal it as their own, or almost like copying and not in an inspiration way. Copying in a I will tear off your skin and wear it as an outfit type of way, which did just quickly get very violent and graphic all at once, but I digress. And so a lot of times when these are coming up, it's very confusing, because I don't know about you, but it almost feels like kind of assholey to be like, oh, this person's jealous of me. That's why they're acting like this, because I'm so cool and they're so not cool, and that's why they're jealous of me. Yeah, that doesn't really make you sound like a grade A person. Like, it makes you sound like you are up your own asshole trying to scope out whether or not, I don't even know what is up there, like gold. And it just makes you sound full of yourself to be like, I think this person's jealous of me. And it's really difficult to know when that's true. And it's such an interesting dilemma to be in a relationship with someone that is jealous of you, because it's a weird thing to point out and also a weird thing to navigate forward. And I want to be very clear, like jealousy in general and like the concept of being jealous is not inherently a bad thing. It's a very normal human emotion to really feel jealous, right? And jealousy is a very interesting display of emotions, because it's not just, oh, I'm jealous of this person. It is deeper than that. I was in this DSM class when I was in graduate school, and my DSM professor was talking about, you know, the different emotions. And he was, I never will forget him saying like the worst emotion that you can feel and the most dangerous emotion that you can feel is jealousy, because jealous people don't react out of logic, and it's very unpredictable, and it is so illogical in the actions that people take out of jealousy. So I quickly want to go over like really what the definition of jealousy is, and because it's a little bit confusing, and I found myself intrigued with what this really is, because there's jealousy, there's envy, and then I would even describe jealousy and friendships all kind of being very similar but also very different. And so I want to go over a few different definitions of this. So envy is a really important characteristic that we should talk about, because oftentimes I find that people are almost like interchanging the two of jealousy and envy. But envy is an emotion that is really characterized by feeling longing and desire towards what someone else has. So think wanting someone's car or house or lifestyle and job, right? That is what envy is. And this is often highlighted when comparing yourself to other people that you perceive as better in whatever way. This is often where jealousy in friendships really showcase. There's a lot of envy in this dynamic of wanting what someone else has. And there's two different types of envy. There's benign envy and malicious envy. And benign envy is actually not a bad thing, right? It's rooted in this desire that another person has, but the entire aspect of it really works to motivate a person to take action and work towards self-improvement without wishing this ill will on another person. And I think it's oftentimes used as like this major catalyst to grow and work towards, oh, this person has this car, this is possible for me, I can just work for it, right? It's not a bad thing. It can really work to motivate you. And then there is malicious envy, and it's very layered. And so malicious envy is really viewed as this bitterness and desire to not only have what this other person has, but also want the person who they're envious of to lose their advantages. And this envy is very, very dangerous and will demonstrate itself in very negative behaviors, work to harm relationships. This person will engage in gossip, work to sabotage, and pretty much any other action aimed to negatively impact the person that they are envious of. And this is what I would say is the closest relation to what jealousy in friendships look like. Because it's that plus what jealousy is, which jealousy is an emotion that typically arises when a person is fearful that they are going to lose their place in whatever they hold as valuable. So the friendship, the romantic relationship, their job, they view this person who they are maliciously envious of and fear that this person is going to jeopardize whatever it is that they value. And it's this really large insecurity over what they view as this threat against whatever it is that they claim to have. And so that is friendship, that is a romantic partner, and envy typically involves two people, whereas jealousy often involves three, if not more. Because it's this triangle of I am friends with this person, and if you come along, then I'm going to lose my status in this relationship. And that is where I would say friendship jealousy intersects, is between jealousy and then malicious envy. And that is why this is so deeply dangerous. So you're now in competition with this person that has what you want. And jealousy can come from anyone. It doesn't have to be from someone that you're in competition with necessarily. It could be from a loved one. It could be from a family member that you're jealous of. And it oftentimes stems from this really deep fear and possessiveness, while envy arrives and feeling longing and sadness towards someone else's essentially like privilege and luck. And to be honest, I don't believe that a lot of people even realize that they're jealous. I think that they're angry and scared and they don't want to be left behind in this made-up game that they play with themselves. And through this process, I have also begun to play this game when someone is jealous of me, because they will come across as criticizing my existence in whatever I do, to the point where I take a step back and I'm really like, why are you criticizing me? Like, if you want to play the comparison game, I have a feeling you are going to lose. Because first of all, I don't look at my friends and attempt to compete with them. And I don't even have that on my radar until in conversations and in these discussions where I'm kind of starting to recognize that someone is jealous of me. I then also begin to compare myself because I'm being put in this environment to do so by this person. But I would also say that someone who is jealous in a friendship and or just jealous in this way is someone who is feeling envy over something that I have that they don't have, and believe that it is not fair, and me obtaining this thing, right, whatever it is that I have that they're jealous of, threatens their security and sense of being, right? And it's this lose-lose situation, because if and when I point this out, I become the bad guy, because often, and research does support this, people who are jealous and display this in friendships and consistently jealous can oftentimes have characteristic traits of someone who demonstrates self-deprecation and is a perpetual victim by their own doing. But they really like to showcase their victimhood, I would say. And this makes sense, right? Because for the most part, people who are incredibly jealous in their friendships also have high anxiety and anxious attachment styles and lower self-esteem. And so it makes sense as to why they would also self-deprecate, because those are also characteristics and qualities of someone who already is struggling with how they're existing. And so for them to just jump to this victimhood of their own doing and kind of announcing it allows for, I would say, almost like a pity party to kind of begin. And then any criticism of their behavior then becomes defensive and also difficult to manage, right? If, someone is making comments about your outfit, and then when you're like, why are you telling me this, right? And try to play back, they're like, well, I can't afford it. Or, well, I just am never comfortable in my body, right? They automatically become a victim to what they were already instigating. And as I said, right, like someone who reaches jealousy quickly often has these qualities of high anxiety, anxious attachment style, and really specifically lower self-esteem. And so what contributes to this? Well, it's a human emotion, most often experienced for the first time in childhood. And I want to give you an example of what this can look like. My earliest memory of jealousy has always been around sibling relations, and I was innately jealous that my sister had such an easier time in grade school, and even I would say like through middle school academically, to where I was really jealous that she was able to do this, and fearing that I would literally be left behind, and wishing that I had her strength, and finding myself so jealous of this, until I was really able to develop this skill myself in education. And I succeeded immensely in college because, probably due to the fact that I struggled so much. But the fear and jealousy was really prevalent in my childhood. And I was so scared that I would be, I would say like left behind, but also valued less and not seen as, I'm the eldest. And so the fear of her almost like passing by me educationally, as, the curriculum, she was in a higher level class. And so we were not, frankly, that far behind, because I was in the lower level classes until I really got to college. And so it was really fearful for me until I was really able to develop my own sense of self around, I'd say, high school, where this was still prevalent, but it wasn't as rooted in fear, and jealousy wasn't as present. And I say this because I find it a really good example, because if I asked her, she would probably also say that she felt really, really jealous of me, because during this time I was getting mass amounts of attention from my parents. And it was both positive and negative, and I only saw it as negative, but she only saw it as positive because they were giving me so much time. And it was easy for her to feel really, really jealous of that. And our parents really worked to help facilitate these conversations, because we were, I would say, really able to express how we were feeling in almost this tantrum-like expression, but it was an expression of our emotions. And this is not new to my family. This jealousy within siblings is so prevalent. In fact, based on a poll in 2023, it found that 46% of Americans with siblings have experienced jealousy in their relationships, and for the most part, it has been seen to aid in child development, with conflicts occurring because resolutions then also have to be the outcome. But our parents did a really good job in handling this, because they would oftentimes reiterate how important we were on a team. So when Alexa, my sister, did really well in school, I also did really well in school. It was a joint effort. And when I did, really well in sports, like she did really well in sports and vice versa. And I think that they really tried their best to highlight both of our strengths, especially in that time, and also facilitating the relationship between ourselves, that we were not in competition. It wasn't, oh, Alexa got an A, what did you get? It was more like a B is really, really good, and that's great. And also an A is also really, really good. And no matter what you did, as long as you tried. And that was really the messaging that was given to both of us. And I think it made it so that we were able to really be friends as adults. And our friendship really began around when I was in high school, and it continued throughout our lives as present day. But my whole point with this is I remember feeling jealous as a child, and it's very, very prevalent, to where it's not this desire to have what the other person has, it's this radical fear that you are not going to be worth as much, that you are going to be left behind, that your value is less by comparison to this person, who, by the way, in this case, shares 50% of your DNA and lives in the same house and is younger than you, and she's just better, right? And that was the interpretation as a child. And, as you age and as adults or children age into adults, we really can understand where our strengths and weaknesses lie and being able to really leverage it. But I really remember feeling it, and it was scary. And I try to remember this when I find people in my life as adults that are showcasing jealousy, because my parents, they have continued to do such a really good job of showcasing who I am and my strengths and not what I'm lacking, especially when I come to them and I'm like, I suck at all these things. They're really good at taking it and being like, I don't think that's true. I think that you are good at these things. And allowing, negative feelings to kind of exist but not grow. And although a lot of these feelings were as a child, as we age, jealousy can get better, but it does not necessarily leave us. And the reason that jealousy doesn't necessarily leave us is because there may be almost this unsettlement in our own lives as we transition so many different times in our life as an adult, right? Think about going into college, graduating from college, going into the workforce, changing jobs, moving, having a relationship, changing relationships, joining friendships, right? There's so many different areas where you're going to feel so uncertain in your life that it's going to be very easy for jealousy to almost blossom because of this desire to feel more settled and wanting that, right? But unfortunately, the only way to get that is to go through the uncertainty. But I digress. That's a different lesson for another time. My whole point is that jealousy continues even as we age, but it does improve. And it improved for me, but I will say I noticed that it does not obviously improve for others. And that's why we're here talking about it. If it improved for everyone, we would no longer be discussing it. But alas, here we are. And I find it so interesting to have jealousy in friendships because, you might have these friends who have this desire to be so similar to you in like what you have, while simultaneously being so angry that you have it. And I find this really true. And I have navigated friendships and relationships where people are sickeningly jealous of me. And it feels really shitty to say it like that, because to when we're discussing this concept of like jealousy, it almost feels like you have to be like this type of person to be jealous of. And it almost makes me feel like I'm being like, yeah, of course they're going to be jealous of me. I'm so cool. And that might be true. I might think those things, but that is not why they're jealous. They're jealous because they want what I have, and they're mad that I have it. They're angry and scared and don't want to be left behind. And so they want to change the rules of a game that they believe that they're losing in. And jealousy to an extent can be completely normal. I have felt jealousy as an adult when I see people having jobs that I wish that I had and upset when I don't get them. But once I, take a step back from this onset of emotions and really allow myself to feel jealous and feel sad that I didn't get these things, I'm also then allowed to really reflect and be like, okay, well, this was just not meant to be. And so I want to give you an example of what it looked like when I most recently and throughout my life have navigated a relationship when someone is jealous of me. Jealousy in friendships, I would say, happens very slowly, right? I think a lot of people enter relationships because they are attracted to who the person is and want to emulate a lot of those characteristics, and or maybe the relationship just falls into their lap and they become friends with this person. But I don't think the act of this friendship is necessarily pursued based off of ill will. I think it's this desire to be friends, right? Because you like all of these qualities that this person has. And over time, those qualities that you originally loved to the person seem to maybe grow, and they get better and better and better, and you find yourself almost feeling the same exact way. And the larger that this distance in your head really grows between yourself and the person that you're envious of, jealousy really starts to take root in trying to rationalize why this person has what they have, and almost belittling it, right? Like, oh, they didn't even work for it, right? It just happened to them, and maybe they really aren't that smart. And are they really pretty, or is it just like that one photo that I've stared at a million times? Or I don't think that they don't have a relationship, or they do have a relationship and it's not even that great. And it's almost like this bargaining of sorts to make this person seem less than, so it closes this gap that you or this person who's jealous of you may be experiencing. And I have felt this in a relationship before where I did not want to jump down and be like, this person's jealous of me, right? Because it doesn't feel good to do that. And also it's hard to know where you go next when someone's jealous of you. Like what happens next? And, I think what happens next is you no longer become friends with this person, and you no longer allow this person in your life, because someone who is jealous is dangerous. And this is not just me saying it. It's not just my DSM professor saying it. It is research saying that a jealous person is a dangerous person. And it's not a jealous person having jealousy. It's a jealous person reacting out of jealousy. And I want that to be very clear. And when I navigated someone who was jealous of me, they worked to tear down every aspect of my existence in such sly ways that it made me question my reality. And it was done in the comments of like what I was wearing, or how I pronounced something, or if I said something wrong. Or my favorite is this, and this is also found in Psychology Today, right? This aspect of almost putting so much effort into working to flip this narrative and make it their entire goal to criticize and scrutinize and misunderstand your intentions and your words to justify their relentless bullying in what they're about to say about you or to you, to make it so they can seek out opportunities for other people then to be like, yeah, we should condemn this person, right? In this group activity of this independent, jealous person, and then bringing in and being like, are they really even that great? I know that they say that they're great, and I know that they are great, but like, are they really? And it really works to target a person that they're jealous of to make the person who is jealous feel better about themselves. and even out this playing field that they're so incredibly desperate to balance because they have this fear of being left behind. I would also argue that the belief that everyone is jealous of you is not necessarily always true. And a goal for people who might find themselves in a pattern of behavior where they, I would say, find every relationship where, oh, someone's just jealous of me, right? I would like everyone who feels that way to actually take a step back, because there's this pattern that I think a lot of people have experienced where our parents, out of good faith, may have told us, like they've told me, right? Oh, ignore what they're doing, like they are just jealous of you. And there's two parts of this that I want to break down. I think that on one hand, that can be really dangerous because it really doesn't allow a person, specifically like a child, to reflect inward and being like, did I do anything to hurt this person? Or maybe they're not even jealous, right? Did I do anything to hurt this person's feelings? Did I do anything that maybe this person just doesn't like me? Their treatment towards me isn't okay, but maybe they just don't like me and they don't want to be friends and I'm not picking up the message that they're putting down, right? And then on the other side of it, this whole concept of, oh, they're treating you like that just because they're jealous, ignore it. Why on earth should you ignore it? If someone inherently is acting jealous and harassing you, why should it be ignored? Because what? They're less fortunate in a lot of the areas that are determined based off of hard work, or they're jealous of things that they're feeding. Again, jealousy isn't bad. The bad aspect around jealousy is the fact that they are oftentimes feeding their jealousy by making it justified. And that's the difference here. So, how do you deal with jealousy? If you are the person who is being targeted, I find it important to determine if this relationship with the person who is acting this way is one you should even keep. And frankly, I don't believe it would be a great idea, but it is possible. You are able to be in a relationship with someone who is jealous of you, but not if they aren't actively working on it. And you will be placing yourself in a friendship that is not safe. And so working to communicate your decision to distance yourself from this friendship will allow you to express yourself, set boundaries, and to navigate forward effectively. But you do have to question and call out the behavior, because if this is a friend that you want to maintain a relationship with, you have to communicate, and not from this place of, I would say, almost like bitterness. It's almost like you need to be able to say, hey, like, I know something's going on. You know, your behavior towards me has been a little bit different and I don't understand why. Can we talk about this and discuss what is going on? Because first and foremost, curiosity should be the first thing that you're really exploring, because it might not be that they're jealous. It might be that, you know, they're immensely struggling with some of the behavior that you're exhibiting, or, you know, it's a certain other reason, or maybe they are just jealous, right? But you should lead with the belief that people are there to be good without being naive. And so that is how I would suggest navigating a friendship, and how I've navigated a friendship with, frankly, less grace, right? Like when I've navigated a friendship and or just like relationship that by proxy I was in, I did not handle it this way. And I was more so aggravated and confused as to why this person was treating me this way. But honestly, like, that wasn't that shocking, right? People are going to do what they're going to do. It was more so, I would say, like, the lack of reaction that other people were exhibiting around me. And upon reflection of this, you know, we just talked about how jealousy is not an uncommon emotion. In fact, nearly 4 in 5 people feel jealous regarding their friends. And that comes from research. And it's really important that I mention this, because just because you're in, say, a friend group where there might be just one jealous person who's acting jealous towards you, it doesn't necessarily mean that other people aren't feeling jealous. And so then I would say by proxy, they benefit from this one person, whoever they are, essentially throwing this, what I would consider like a jealousy tantrum. and maybe working to tear you down a little bit or humble you, but they're doing this thing. And by proxy, people who are maybe also jealous or feeling jealousy without expressing it towards you are benefiting from this person that they're around that is showcasing their behavior in this way. And so it's not just important to evaluate the person who is being jealous, but also the environment that you're putting yourself in. Because when I have been targeted and harassed in this way, I have really deeply questioned if I did something wrong and working to give someone the benefit of the doubt. But I really always walk away feeling gross, and I really try to understand why someone was treating me this way, because I really could not understand or grasp why it was. And to say, oh, this person is just like really jealous of me, it almost feels like I might be underestimating and devaluing other aspects that I could just have been wrong in. So I was really trying to beat it into the ground as to why someone was treating me this way. And upon reflection with, some of my closest friends and the people that I really cherish in my life, my family and mentors, it was very clear that this was just like blatant jealousy. And it doesn't feel good, right? But I am working still to essentially take my power back and not allow a tantrum of another person dictate how I feel about myself. And more importantly, not allowing the people around me to dictate what is, in like these group settings, is appropriate and inappropriate behavior. I just said how the worst thing, or one of the worst things, right, that has been told is, oh, like if someone's jealous of you, just ignore it. Why are we ignoring harassment? I actually think that it should be faced head on. I was talking to people about this, like just addressing essentially passive-aggressive behavior in a way that flips the narrative. And rather than getting defensive and being like, I don't understand why you're treating me this way and what is going on, it's more like when they make this dig or they do this thing, it's like, what made you do that? Sorry, can you say that again? I'm not really sure that was a good thing that you just said to me, right? And almost slowing down the speech, slowing down the thought process, because again, a lot of digs are sly, and it's more so bringing this awareness to being like, I'm sorry, come again? Like, what did you just say to me? And I find that oftentimes it feels like it's taking power back, right? Because the whole purpose is to try to, make you feel like you're less than. And the worst thing that you can do is allow that to happen. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I would say I have learned in this entire endeavor and throughout my life, right? Like, you don't have to be humble, period. You don't have to just take it just because you've done XYZ or you have XYZ. I want to just be really clear in saying that if you are someone that has jealous people in your life, it can be really easy to fall into a trap of wanting to fix it and understand it so that maybe things could go back to normal. But that is never going to happen when you engage with a person who is incredibly insecure and has this low self-esteem due to so many different circumstances, right? Certain childhood experiences, poor parental relationships, and maybe even just this really deep-rooted fear of abandonment that is being triggered by whoever and whatever they're jealous of, and in this case, it's you. But frankly, this has nothing to do with you. You're just the victim of their behavior, and rather than standing or sitting in it, you really need to work to remove yourself from this narrative and distancing yourself in this way. Because again, everything that you want to change in your life or that you want changed in your life requires action, and this is no different. So let's say that you are someone who is jealous. You're the jealous friend. Well, I would say that this is not an experience unique to you. As I said just a little bit ago, nearly 4 in 5 people, this was based in the US, they feel jealous regarding their friends. And I bring this up because I think that oftentimes when, people feel jealous in their relationships, whether it's family, friendships, whatever it is, a lot of times they feel like this is a attack on their personhood and that it's unique to them and it's just this friend that they're jealous of. But I would argue that completely. I would say that it is not just based off of this one person, this one friend. It is a state of being. And it is one that either gets triggered or not. But you are a jealous friend. You are a person who is easily jealous. Now, this may not apply to everyone, but I'm going off on a limb here to say that I believe that you may be struggling to withstand discomfort. And in this instance, the discomfort of viewing yourself as less than is really, really prevalent. As these emotions really plague you, I wouldn't be surprised if you've almost been trying to, quote unquote, like get back at the person triggering you, who you're jealous of, which is the problem that we're discussing. Right? This belief that they, whoever you're jealous of, being they, right, deserve it. Right? And that is not true. And that's what really needs to be challenged, that this is not you getting even with someone. This is not you evening the playing fields. This is you going out of your way because you are feeling inadequate in different areas of your life. And you have this need to overcompensate to make it so that you don't get left behind and that you're not forgotten or you're not whatever it is that you're fearing in this instance. So I am going to introduce to you some skills in order for you to slow yourself down, see if maybe you're being triggered by your friend or whatever your trigger is, questioning it, and what to really do about it. Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions for you to ask yourself and really just listen and see if these are prevalent in your friendships or if they're prevalent by your friends' behaviors. So here goes. Are you excited for your friends' accomplishments? Do their wins make you question your own accomplishments? And I think that this can be a really interesting question because I could see, a friend maybe that you worked with or someone that was around the same like life cycle as you, right? Graduated college at the same time, post-grad at the same time, whatever. I could see that being like, oh, they're manager now. Like, should I be manager? Right? But it's not that. Again, it's this deep jealousy of like, are you excited that they did it for themselves? Or do their wins make you feel like you're not accomplished enough, right? Does it make you question your own accomplishments? The next question is, do you believe they deserve what they have in their life that you specifically want, right? So if someone who you're jealous of is maybe, say, has a lot of friends, right? Do you believe that they deserve having a lot of friends and deserve their status in their friendships? And do you, in this instance, like believe that they deserve to have these friends that you also want, right? It's really questioning if you believe that someone deserves the good things in their lives and specifically like the things that you're jealous of. This one I find interesting. And so it's, does your style copy someone else's or is it based on your life? And so I find this so interesting because style is often indicative of our actual hobbies and not necessarily present when we are emulating the person that we're jealous of. And so it can be really sly in this way of how jealousy can show up, where you are essentially cosplaying whoever it is that you're copying is like their life that has this lifestyle, or is this really specific to you? And I find it very subtle. Like I find this a very subtle way of where jealousy is very, very transparent. So I'm going to go over the next 4 pretty quickly because they all kind of sandwich together. So, do you believe that you are a victim in your own life? Do you have agency to choose your own path? Do you know who you are? And do you feel the need to humble this person? And the reason I'm lumping these 4 together is because they really emphasize someone who is feeling maybe like stuck in their life and then sees someone who's not stuck in their life and almost like latch on to the person who has everything that they really like represent and want in their life. And will maybe use the 4, examples that I just gave, especially the first 3 of like believing that they're a victim, not having agency, not really knowing who they are, as like signing up to give it almost like an excuse as to why they're not there yet and why it's so much harder for them. And so I find that interesting. It's not necessarily solely based off of jealousy, but I find the concept of it to be very intriguing because it does showcase someone with a lower self-esteem often. And I think where the do you feel the need to humble this person is more like, do you feel this need to bring the person down to like essentially like your level? I find the ones that are often not as directly a display of jealousy to be even more interesting because they're less loud. And so do you go out of your way to misunderstand a person, right? Do you actively misinterpret what someone is saying? People who are jealous will try to essentially trap you in a way to showcase a wrongdoing of this person that they are jealous of in order to bring a collective group together and lower this person's social status. And I actually was not fully aware of this one, but throughout the research, I found it in one of the articles, and it really works in a group context of misinterpreting someone to a point where it completely flips the narrative and changes what the person was originally saying of who they're jealous of, and then brings people together and be like, this person, I told you this person wasn't that great. And to go along with that, this like questioning of it is, do you try to flip the narrative to benefit yourself? These ones are all more sly. Are you excited when someone makes a dig at a person you are jealous of? And are you a bystander in this? And so I find this kind of to tie in what I was saying about a group dynamic and how, there might be one person who's actively displaying jealousy towards you, right? They do not believe that you deserve the things that you have. They're really angry about it, so on and so forth, right? It's not just envy. And they're acting on it, right? Whereas I think that most people, as we said, 4 and 5 people are very jealous, and I don't think everyone always acts on it, but it doesn't mean that they don't feel it. And so when I say, are you excited when someone makes a dig at a person that you are jealous of, or that, you have this weird feeling towards, right? Like, I think I would describe it as like pit of the stomach, like fear, right? Like it's fear oftentimes is jealous, or rage, or irrationality and like insecurity, right? It's kind of coming up for you when you're thinking of someone that, again, really point to you being jealous of like the things that you want. And so are you someone who essentially benefits from the person that you are jealous of being almost like humbled in this way, or like made fun of, the butt of the joke? Like, do you benefit? And so these questions don't necessarily solely point to you being a jealous person or jealous of your friends, but they do point to a need for you to evaluate your insecurities that are popping up in areas of your life. So what do you do now? First of all, you acknowledge this, and the best way to do this endeavor is something called a thought record. And this aspect really works to write down and working to observe what is happening in the moment that triggers you in this way, what your emotional reaction is, and any thoughts that come up with this, and then support for or against this belief, right? So it's, what is the trigger? What is the emotion? What are your thoughts around it? And can you support your thoughts in this endeavor? And this process really works to have you become aware of what you are thinking without real judgment, but observing your thoughts so that we can react differently and address the root cause. The whole goal here is to become aware of what triggers your emotions and thought patterns so that we can work to reframe it and challenge the behaviors of jealousy that are being expressed in your friendships. Not only that, but the more we work to practice increasing our confidence, self-esteem, and emotional tolerance, the less likely you will be quick to jealousy. And so the best way to practice those things is really to experience life and to take up hobbies and make yourself almost vulnerable, which almost seems, counterintuitive of feeling insecure and then making yourself more vulnerable. But through this process of opening yourself up to new experiences and working to build your confidence through doing, and again, taking like this agency over your life, the more confident you will feel, and working to build emotional tolerance in feeling the emotions when jealousy arises. So like feeling anger, right? Feeling sadness, feeling fear of being replaced, feeling all these really uncomfortable emotions, kind of working to track where they originated from and working towards the goal of not feeling this way towards the people that you're meant to love in your life. And so that concludes today's podcast. Have you ever had a jealous friend? If so, let me know. Are you the jealous friend? I'm also here for you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast of Your Therapist, Favorite Therapist, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.